Now you're probably reading the title thinking, shut your well, let me make myself very clear. I'm not saying Jon Jones is a bad fighter. I'm just saying he'll never be in my top 10 greatest fighters of all time. For me, I personally judge a UFC fighter off of legacy as a fighter. For example, let's look at Khabib. As a fighter, he retired as one of the most dominant players in the sport, meaning that he has the most 10-8 rounds in the UFC. On top of that, he's completely undefeated and has never done any illegal or malicious things. And when we look at Jon, his legacy is definitely one to mention, starting with beating his wife, crashing into a pregnant lady, and literally taking steroids. Like, as someone who has friends who fight and take steroids, the difference between those who take these substances and those who don't is massive. It's like fighting a level 1 skeleton to getting bludgeoned by a level 15 Mega Knight. And to those people who say that it was just a mistaken supplement or it was just tainted, it doesn't matter. If you get caught having any of that stuff in your system, that means you got it there somehow for some reason. And if it's there, it's providing you an unfair advantage against your opponents. Plus, when you get off these substances, your body ends up looking like absolute shit. Like, let's look at Alistair Overeem. My guy looked like an absolute beast when USADA wasn't in full control. Then after they did get control, he ended up looking like this. And when we compare someone like Overeem to Jon, there's a striking resemblance in body deformation. And on the topic of body deformation, let's talk about coke. We all know the effects of coke and what it can do to the body. Like, I mean, the legal definition of cocaina is a central nervous system stimulant and a tropicame altoid derived primarily from the leaves of two coca species native to South America. Or in basic words, a drug that makes you go crazy. And I mean, we have a clear example of this with Conor McGregor, a guy who went from saying stuff like this,
partying is weakness for the soul, my friend, so I try and avoid it,
to now getting SA allegations in the club. And looking at Jon, he's not far from it. But instead of doing things with women, he's just beating them. Now I'm just looking at his criminal record. How about we actually look at his fights? Now, in my opinion, Jon Jones never retired undefeated. In fact, I think he's 25-4.
Man, shut your bitch.
Hold up. Let me explain. First, let's talk about the illegal elbows. Now, I know the rule's stupid, but at the time, Jon should have been more diligent and not spam it like 100 times. On top of that, Jon was acting surprised even after being warned by the ref. And for the next two fights, I'm going to be talking about Alexander Gustafsson and Dominic Reyes. Now, I'm going to give a little bit more leniency to Gustafsson, but for Dominic, Jon lost that fight 100%. And at the time, the entire world was screaming the same. But somehow, he managed to win that match. For me, that just honestly doesn't sit right. And now for the last loss, it would be to Mr. 50-0, never lost a round, greatest of all time, Chael Sonnen. And if you're an MMA fan, you probably know about the controversy of this match. But for those who don't know, let me explain. When Jon Jones fought Chael Sonnen, he flipped his toe upside down and tore it off really bad. And if the fight made it to the end of the first round, Chael would have won the match. Plus, because Jon Jones used dark magic right before the match, Chael Sonnen wasn't able to use his aura at all. Like, this is completely preposterous. Okay, well, besides the second point, I think that if the ref was a little bit more aware and saw the torn toe, the fight could have been stopped and Chael Sonnen would have won. Now, I would end the video here, but there's one more topic I gotta talk about, and it's about Tom Aspinall. Now, I know this topic's been covered like 100,000 times, but I'm gonna go over it one more time. So to essentially summarize it, Jon Jones had his last fight last year in November against a fragile old Stipe Miocic. And ever since then, Jon has absolutely been dodging the fight against the interim champion Tom Aspinall. Like, I mean, this dodging has gotten so far to the point where Tom had 3 interim fights where he didn't get a title shot. On top of that, Jon has even changed his public profile picture to a duck while trolling Tom on Twitter almost every day. According to him, the reason behind why he didn't want to fight Tom is because Tom hadn't achieved anything substantial in his career to warrant any fight at this level. In fact, Jon was way more interested in fighting Alex Pereira for a title shot. And in the end, we never got the Jon Aspinall fight we wanted. All we got was a retirement tweet that closed the book indefinitely. But that's not where our story ends. Now, you've probably heard about the possibility of a UFC fight at the White House. And because of the many American UFC fighters, there's a high demand for these fights on that card. And knowing Jon, he's been on both his knees trying to suck it up to Dana in order to get a fight on this card. He even goes on to tweet even after he retired about this. Like, bro, you ducked Aspinall for 6 months, but the second the idea of a White House card comes into picture, you are on hands and knees trying to get a taste of that American freedom. Like what the fuck?